ॐ परतत्त्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्णसमाज्ञया यो धर्मस्थापनरतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. We had two classes on Swami Vivekananda's Karma Yoga, and in the first class we saw only the perspective and some practices, and in the second class we read the first paragraph of the first chapter. And the name of the first chapter is Karma in its effect on character. So by this very name we understood that karma has two types of effects simultaneously. Whenever we do any karma, some result is produced outside and a sanskara is produced in our mind. And we are interested only in that sanskara. We are not interested in the outside result which it brings. Rather, if we think too much or if we think of the outside result, then the desired sanskaras are not formed. And so, by the very name, Swamiji is telling us, let us be more aware of the sanskaras formed by this karma. And these sanskaras make up our character. And when the character is perfected, then only we can get knowledge. And we discussed at great length what is knowledge. And in the very beginning, Swamiji is telling that knowledge is the goal of life. And in some other chapters he is telling freedom is the goal of life. And he has shown the connection also, freedom through knowledge. He has clearly stated, and we have seen this in the first class and also in the second. So now, what is this knowledge? And we have discussed it at great length. It is not information or intellectual conviction. It is the change of our consciousness. So if Karma Yoga means karma without attachment in a general way, then Swamiji has shown that this non-attachment is whole life's work. So we have to do karma and try to be more and more unattached. And we have seen that this also is possible, not by work, but by knowledge or devotion, or both. So, the effect produced on our mind, resulting in the purification of the mind, this also we saw, that the purpose of karma is the purification of the mind. So when the result of our karma becomes purification of the mind, when the mind is purified, then only we become capacitous of experiencing God, experiencing our real nature. We can term in any language you want. We can experience our real nature. And then, gradually, step by step, we can realize permanently our real nature, and then only we become totally unattached. Our real nature is Atman, and to realize that is called gaining of knowledge. This much we have read last time, and now we read the second paragraph. Now this knowledge again is inherent in man. So as I said, knowledge is not some information we get from outside. Knowledge is inherent in man. This is a Vedantic truth. This truth is known by Vedanta alone. Man, the real nature of man is Chaitanya. And all knowledge that we get as information, all knowledge that we get by conviction, who gets this knowledge? The Chaitanya element in us. It is the Chaitanya which gets knowledge. Not our ears or eyes or through these mediums the knowledge comes. So where is the knowledge now? We being Chaitanya Swarup, all knowledge is inside. This you have to understand very clearly. Now, both the spiritual knowledge and the secular knowledge are all inside. Now, we are not aware of the spiritual knowledge, so Swamiji takes up an example of a secular knowledge and shows how the knowledge is within. We will discuss this when we proceed a little. Now this knowledge again is inherent in man. Important. What we learn in the classroom, what we learn from the media, what we learn from other people, what is it? They are suggestions, and the knowledge comes from within. I remember here one incident beautiful. In the Nagpur ashrama, one girl, Pushpa by name, she was lecturer in physics in the science college there. Now she used to come to ashrama quite often. It was the month of April, I remember, and she came at about 11 o'clock. And when she made pranams to my Guruji, he immediately said, Pushpa, how are you here now? You don't have college. Now she wanted to explain that in the month of April she was lecturing physics. So all the classes are over, theory classes are over, boys are revising their practicals. So when they want, they come to the lecturer. Otherwise the lecturer is comparatively free. This she wanted to explain. So she started saying, Maharaj, teaching is now over. As soon as he heard this, I saw our Maharaj shudder. Pushpa, you are teaching? I never knew you are teaching. I thought you are helping them to learn. Remember, this is called Vedanta Murti. Vedanta is imbibed so much. So knowledge is within. You are helping them to learn, not teaching. So, those who have read Swamiji's works, he also says that by you thinking that you are teaching, you destroy everything. Never take the attitude that you are teaching. You are arousing knowledge in him. The work of the so-called teacher is to arouse the knowledge which is already in man. Now, for example, Swamiji has given here Newton's theory. After reading that, we can explain more. You see, we say Newton discovered law of gravity. Discovered. From where? From his own mind. Now, when we learn, some professor or teacher comes and he explains to us Newton's law of gravity. If we just memorize it, we have not learned it. We learn, we discover. We discover the law of gravity, then only we have understood it. Then how we say Newton discovered? In the modern age, Newton was the first to discover it. And he has described the steps by which we can discover it. And the teacher explains those steps. We take those steps and then from within the knowledge comes. I will give another example. I had a very beautiful teacher. Now, mathematics teacher. He used to write on the board one step and then keep some blank place and write the another step. So why we could understand easily, it is the third step, he has not written the second step. After writing, he would look at the face of all the boys and girls. Everybody is trying to get at the second step. And as soon as a boy or a girl gets that second step, the face shines. And this the teacher knows. So after writing that, he is simply looking at the boys and girls for 5 minutes maybe. Then he sees 1 or 2 or maybe 3, 4, 5 boys, no shine on their face. Then he writes the second step. And the moment he writes the second step, he rubs out the third step and writes fourth or fifth step. Think. So, the knowledge comes from within. The secular knowledge, we get knowledge only when it comes from within. Some people think we memorize. Memorization may be all right for your examination, not for knowledge. So here also, automatically, My attempt is to arouse that knowledge in you. And your attempt should be, by listening, to arouse that knowledge in yourself. This is the process of education. And so, Swamiji is telling us here, it is all inside. What we say a man knows should in strict psychological language be what he discovers or unveils. There is a veil on knowledge. All our knowledge is covered by our wrong knowledge. And when this veil is lifted a little, real knowledge comes out. So, it is called discover, removing the cover, or unveiling, removing the veil. What a man learns is really what he discovers by taking the cover of his own soul. Here, soul does not mean self or Atmana. Soul means Antakaranam. Soul means what we call the man's inner core of personality. And there all the knowledge is there. And it has been covered by our wrong knowledge. And when that wrong knowledge is removed a little, is really what he discovers by taking the cover of his own soul, which is a mine of infinite knowledge. Soul is mine of infinite knowledge. Now we always understand now what is Karma Yoga and all that. The whole attempt of life is to discover, unveil the real knowledge of our own real nature, which is already there. We don't have to borrow or get our real nature from somewhere. We don't have to borrow knowledge from outside. We do borrow, and by this knowledge we rub it on our ignorance. This outside knowledge received from the rishis, received from Swami Vivekananda, we rub it on our ignorance. Then the ignorance vanishes and the inner knowledge comes out. This is the process. And as Swamiji has told us, through knowledge, mukti we get. So remember, our goal of life is knowledge or mukti through knowledge, and this knowledge is inside us, has to be discovered, has to be aroused. This is the whole sadhana of life. Now how karma helps it, that Swamiji is showing now. We say Newton discovered gravitation. We say, was it sitting anywhere in a corner waiting for him? It was in his own mind. The time came and he found it out. Added a word, in the modern world. That means the ancients knew gravitation. But we had forgotten. Newton was the first to discover. The external world, all knowledge, it was in his own mind. The time came and he found it out. All knowledge that the world has ever received comes from the mind. The infinite library of the universe is in your own mind. Remember. The external world is simply the suggestion, the occasion, which sets you to study your own mind. But the object of your study is always your own mind. And that is why the ingoing nature is important. That is why the karma sanskaras are important. The karma, outside result may be anything. But the karma sanskaras will help us to remove this veil. The falling of an apple gave the suggestion to Newton, and he studied his own mind. He rearranged all the previous links of thought in his mind and discovered a new link among them. The link was not new, he discovered it newly. When he rearranged all the links in his own mind, he discovered one more link, which we call the law of gravitation. It was not in the apple, nor in anything in the center of the earth. Gravitation is in the apple, gravitation is in the center of earth, not law of gravitation. The knowledge is the law of gravitation. And this law he discovered in his own mind, not in the apple, not in the earth. It was not in the apple nor in anything in the center of the earth. All knowledge, therefore, secular or spiritual. Swamiji has given the example of secular knowledge for us to understand easily. Spiritual knowledge we do not have today. So, he has given the example of secular knowledge. But he has stated, all knowledge, therefore, secular or spiritual, is in the human mind. In many cases, it is not discovered, but remains covered. And when the covering is being slowly taken off, we say, we are learning. And the advance of knowledge is made by the advance of this process of uncovering. The man from whom this veil is being lifted is the more knowing man, sadhaka. When it is more and more getting at the truth, getting at the real nature of man, we say he is a knowing man. The man upon whom it lies thick is ignorant. This veil. When veil is very thick, he does not know his own real nature, and so we say he is ignorant. And the man from whom it has entirely gone is all-knowing, omniscient. Once we know our real nature, we know the whole world, and so we are called omniscient, all-knowing. When the veil has been totally lifted. Now one funny incident will come to our mind. Not funny, very important incident in Swami Vivekananda's life. This brilliant graduate of Calcutta was not getting a job. And hunting the job, one day he was exhausted. And he lay down on the parapet of a house. And then from outside he became unconscious like. And he was all the time thinking, why in this world which is created by God there is so much misery? Now he, as if he slept from outside, he entered inside and he says, several veils were removed from my mind. And I came to know why there is misery in the world. The fun is after this. He has never described to us that knowledge. You understand that? What is the meaning? He says he found out why there is misery in the God's world, but he has never described what he found out. Meaning is that when layers will be removed from our mind, we will discover it. Because layers were removed from his mind and he discovered, that is what he has stated. So when the layers will be removed from our mind, we shall discover. It is not something to be told in words. So everywhere we will see the same thing. Now, there have been omniscient men. The world is never without omniscient men. Sometimes we fail to recognize them. And I believe there will be yet. That means in future also there will be omniscient people, you and us, and that there will be myriads of them in the cycles to come. Future, myriads, millions and millions and millions will come, men with full knowledge. Like fire in a piece of flint, knowledge exists in this world. Suggestion is the friction which brings it out. So with all our feelings and actions now, so knowledge has been told. So with all our feelings and actions, our tears and our smiles, our joys and our griefs, our weeping and our laughter, he has told in the beginning itself, both are teachers. Our curses and our blessings, our praises and our blames, every one of them we may find, if we calmly study our own selves, to have been brought out from within ourselves by so many blows. Knowledge is inside, then he has generalized that whatever we see in our life has come from inside by receiving blows from outside. By receiving blows from outside, some portion of the covering has gone and all these things are come out of us. The result is what we are. What we are? What is our character that we are? So, our character is formed by responses from within of the blows that we receive. All these blows taken together are called karma. So karma in its effect on character, when the blows come, good and bad, and then from within the response comes, this makes our tendencies and that makes our character. Action are called karma, work, action. Why I said this? He has told in the beginning, we have to study all actions. And he is describing in here what is all. Every mental and physical blow that is given to the soul, mental and physical blow, as it were, fire is struck from it, and by which its own power and knowledge are discovered. Knowledge is power, you see. So, both these things, power and knowledge, they come out by the blows that we receive. It is karma. The blows is karma. Every mental and physical blow that is given to the soul, by which, as it were, fire is struck from it, and by which its own power and knowledge are discovered, is karma. This word being used in its widest sense. Now here I may tell you something, or at later stage. When Shankaracharya says karma does not make us reach heaven or God, he means the ritualistic portion of Vedas. Swami Vivekananda by karma is meaning all karma. Remember this difference. And what all karma? Thus we see, thus we are all doing karma all the time. I am talking to you, that is karma. You are listening, that is karma. We breathe, that is karma. We walk, karma. Everything we do, physical or mental, is karma, and it leaves its marks on us. Everything that we do, physical or mental, is karma, and along with the fruit which it brings, it leaves its mark on us. So by this, Swamiji is making us very careful in life, so that every karma of ours should be such that it brings out the knowledge, it brings out the power. Now, important point, next point. So today we have studied that knowledge is within, and karma is that blow by which it comes out, and this karma means every karma, physical or mental, even breathing, listening. Now, we see the big karmas. There are certain works which are, as it were, the aggregate, the sum total of a large number of smaller works. We move the hand. So many nerves and muscles are being moved from our mind. We see only the movement of the hand, but so many things have happened before the hand has moved. And everything is a karma. So the movement which you saw is the sum total of a large number of smaller works. If we stand near the seashore, example beautiful, if we stand near the seashore and hear the waves dashing against the shingle, we think it is such a great noise. And yet we know that one wave is really composed of millions and millions of minute waves. Millions and millions of minute waves make one wave which we see. Each one of these is making a noise, and yet we do not catch it. It is only when they become the big aggregate that we hear. Similarly, every pulsation of the heart is work. He has gone so deep now. Every pulsation of the heart is work. Certain kinds of work we feel and they become tangible to us. They are at the same time the aggregate of a number of small works. From this he is deriving an important conclusion. If you really want to judge of the character of a man, look not at his great performances. Every fool may become a hero at some time or the other. When the crisis comes, he becomes a hero. Watch a man do his most common actions. Those are indeed the things which will tell you the real character of a great man. Sri Ramakrishna was watched like this by Swami Vivekananda, Saradananda and all his disciples. And in every action, his consciousness was coming out. And they saw, what they saw? If you take Sri Ramakrishna as an individual, his actions, small or big, will be meaningless or of a lunatic man. Only when we see that it serves a cosmic purpose, then we'll understand the meaning of those actions. So, we have to study the action, its effect on character, its outside result, every small action we have to see. Otherwise, in this situation, I can say I am a big man or I can behave like a big man. Great occasions rouse even the lowest of human beings to some kind of greatness. But he alone is the really great man, whose character is great always, the same wherever he be. One example is Swami Vivekananda was with Holy Mother. A knife was lying there. And Holy Mother asked him, "My boy, please hand over me that knife." Immediately, Swamiji turned that knife, held the blade and gave the handle in Mother's hand. You understand? Very small action. Generally, if we give a blade, we will hold the handle and produce very lightly. And if the person catches the blade, it will be hurt. Holy Mother asked Swami Vivekananda to hand over the knife to her. He immediately turned it, held the blade and gave the handle in the hands of her. This is small action. Reveals very big thing in the character. His consideration, his unselfishness by the smallest action. He is a really great man whose character is great always, the same wherever he be. So, next point was importance of small actions, and small actions only make big actions, and we generally see the big actions, but Swami Vivekananda advised us. This is another practice you may please add. In our normal observation, for the greatness of a man, let us observe his breathing. Let us observe every action of it. Let us observe the pulsation of his heart, and it will reveal great things. Now, Swamiji is telling, karma in its effect on character is the most tremendous power that man has to deal with. Karma producing big results outside this thing. But karma in the effect on character is the biggest force. And we have to deal with it day and night. Small work, big work, everything is producing a character. And this character is what we want. And so we have to see that man is, as it were, a center and is attracting all the powers of the universe towards himself. And in this center is fusing them all and again sending them off in a big current. This is what is happening. Not that somebody says something and we react. Our reaction is the cumulative effect of whatever we have heard up till now. So one more factor comes. We mix it with all our things and then character comes out. Such a center is the real man, the soul. That is what he is describing. The Almighty, the Omniscient. So herein lies inside all knowledge, all the power, and the actions go there and bring out a little out of it. And he draws the whole universe towards him. Good and bad, misery and happiness, all are running towards him and clinging round him. And out of them, he fashions the mighty stream of tendency called character. Tendency, in such situation we behave like that. In that situation we behave like that. That is called the tendency. And all tendencies taken together is character and throws it outside. So we can see, observe, through every action and talk of man, the character comes out. As he has the power of drawing in anything, so has he the power of throwing it out. So, point was, karma is every karma, small or big, it produces an effect because inside the character is there and it unveils our response now. Another important point, and that point is thought. Thought does not only mean thinking. Thought is a general term. It means thinking, feeling, will, everything in the mind. So mind and matter. Swamiji is now describing the importance of mind. Because actions we see physically. And unless we understand what mind was expressed through those actions, we cannot understand a man. So, all the actions that we see in the world, all the movements in human society, all the works that we have around us are simply the display of thought, the manifestation of the will of man. So thinking, feeling, will, all included in mind of man. Machines or instruments, cities, ships or men of war. Men of war, ships used for fighting is called men of war. All these are simply the manifestations of the will of man. First man thinks, wills, I will do this, and then only the action comes out. So we see people working by their hands, but first the idea comes in the mind. And this will is caused by character. As per the character, the will comes out. If the character is totally unselfish, everything he does is unselfish. We may understand or not, but if we critically study, we will find that he has done this to help somebody. And character is manufactured by karma. Every karma producing a sanskar, the totality of this sanskar is character, and this character comes out in every action of ours. As is karma, so is the manifestation of the will. So this karma is molding our will. Same karma, but if we are doing unselfishly, it is molding our will in a different way. If we are doing selfishly, the sanskar is different and the will be different. The men of mighty will the world has produced here have all been tremendous workers, gigantic souls with wills powerful enough to overturn the worlds. How they got this? Wills they got by persistent work through ages and ages. Another important thing, people may believe or may not, but working through life after life, then only ages after ages is coming, na? So in one life we have done some work, we have made some character, that becomes the starting point in the next life. We are doing more work, more character is being formed, that we carry in the next life. So, through ages and ages, if the work is done in a particular direction, then it becomes very big. Such a gigantic will. Now Swamiji is giving beautiful examples for this. And here, a wrong theory is being repudiated by him. And that wrong theory is theory of heredity. Why you are a good boy? Because my father was good. Why you are a bad boy? My father was bad. This is not correct. So, why you are a good boy? In my previous life I was a good boy. Why you are a bad boy? In my previous life I earned the bad tendencies, so I am bad. So the whole responsibility is again being thrown on man. We should never say, my father is responsible for this, my house is responsible for this. Lot of things are told about like that by people in general. But Swamiji is telling this is absolutely untrue. Example, such a gigantic wheel as that of a Buddha or a Jesus could not be obtained in one life. For we know who their fathers were. It is not known that their fathers ever spoke a word for the good of mankind. Jesus' father was a carpenter. Millions and millions of carpenters like Joseph had gone. Millions are still living. Buddha's father was a petty king. Millions and millions of petty kings like Buddha's father had been in the world. If it was only a case of hereditary transmission, how do you account for this petty prince, who was not perhaps obeyed by his own servants, producing this son whom half a world worships? How do you explain the gulf between the carpenter and his son, whom millions of human beings worship as God? It cannot be solved by the theory of heredity. So by this, Swamiji is telling us, don't blame heredity. Your own past life has made you. This life will make your future. The gigantic wheel which Buddha and Jesus threw over the world, whence did it come? Gigantic wheel, because they influence the half of humanity. Whence came this accumulation of power? It must have been there through ages and ages, continually growing bigger and bigger until it burst on society in a Buddha or a Jesus, even rolling down to the present day. The power exhibited by Buddha or Jesus is even today influencing people. What a great power. All this is determined by karma, work. No one can get another important point, very important point. No one can get anything unless he earns it. This is an eternal law. You get what we deserve. Many times we are disgruntled. I did not get this, you did not deserve it. If you deserve it, automatically it comes to you. Important thing, because we should not blame the society, the organization, the situation. We get what we deserve. We may sometimes think it is not so, but in the long run, we become convinced of it. We do not see it normally. Because of our selfish desires, we do not see that. We feel we should have this. We do not get it. We blame the society, the time and so many fate. But after a long time, we discover, yes, we got what we deserve. A man may struggle all his life for riches. He may cheat thousands, but he finds at last that he did not deserve to become rich, and his life becomes a trouble and a nuisance to him. Because of wrong expectations, a man becomes nuisance to himself and trouble to others. Here I will quote something which one of my teachers told me. You know, this what we in English call frustration is in some languages called as apeksha bhanga. That means what we expected did not come. This makes us frustrated. That teacher used to say, our expectation did not materialize because expectation was wrong. Expectation is to be based on what we deserve. And we did not deserve it and we were expecting it. So we got frustrated. So, now another example. Different, little subtler. One is becoming rich. Now suppose you have become rich, but you are not able to enjoy. We may go on accumulating things for our physical enjoyment, but only what we earn is really ours. Accumulation is different thing. That is not earning. What we are troubled, what we are exerted for, what we deserve, that much we can enjoy. This is the subtle observation. A fool may buy all the books in the world and they will be in his library, but he will be able to read only those that he deserves to. And this deserving is produced by karma. So again and again, how karma is affecting our character, various angles is showing. Our karma determines what we deserve and what we can assimilate. Assimilation. We are responsible for what we are, and whatever we wish ourselves to be, we have the power to make ourselves. So by exerting, not in this life, next life, we will get what we want. If what we are now has been the result of our own past actions, in the beginning Swamiji has told, past actions produce this result, our actions will produce future result, so he is referring to that now. If what we are now has been the result of our own past actions, it certainly follows that whatever we wish to be in future can be produced by our present actions. So we have to know how to act. He told, we read from the first day, Karma Yoga is the knowledge of the secret of work. So here he is telling, karma is producing character, the attitude behind the karma is producing the character. So how to work we should know. How to work is not the practical, You are not learning carpentry, but with what attitude to work, with what mental attitude to work, that we have to learn. And that will give different sanskaras. Two persons doing the same thing will be affected differently. My teacher used to give some example. Somebody has donated 1,000 rupees, 1,000 these days, in those days. This we see in the newspapers. Now, he might have donated to somebody on whom he is attached. That will produce a different result. The attachment will grow. These days, trusts are made by corporates. So their own trust they give donations. Only the income tax is avoided. That is not charity. Now somebody has given with the expectation that he may pay me later on. Then that will be a different sanskara. And if one has given only to a fit person who was fit to receive, and he out of his own bounty has given, then this sanskar will be different. So we should know how to work means our attitude behind the work is the center here. So we have to know how to act. You will say, that means immediately the Purva Paksha comes. You will say, what is the use of learning how to work? Everyone works in some way or other in this world. But there is such a thing as frittering away our energies. I give an example in some class. There was a running race in school, competition. Before that, boys were practicing. I had gone to the ground. Now one boy appeared to run very fast, and the other did not appear to run that fast. What was the difference? He was coached properly. So his movement was only when the leg comes like this hand goes like this, and this hand goes like this. Other than this lateral movement, there was no movement. And the other boys like this, like this, like this, like this, so much movement was there. And that movement was obstructing his own movement. So Swamiji is telling frittering away of energies. This is a physical example. Swamiji will give psychological example. But we understand. And that is why the coaching and all that are done. How to work should be known. Two boys are working, but one boy's work is useless. The other boy's work is making him win. Physical example. With regard to Karma Yoga, the Gita says that it is doing work with cleverness and as a science. He is referring to, throughout the Karma Yoga, fully Gita shloka by shloka you can see. And this is a shloka of the Gita much misinterpreted by people. You know what is the shloka? Yogasya kuru karmani sangam tekta dhananjaya siddhi siddho samabhutva samatvam yoga uchyati, the definition of yoga. And then in the next shloka, yoga karmasu kaushalam. In Sanskrit, if you put an adjective and a noun, the sentence is completed. But you have to know which is adjective and which is the noun. This shloka is misinterpreted. Karmasu kaushalam yoga, they say. Example is given. Suppose you are typing with 100 speed. Suppose you are typing with 200 speed. Then you are karma yogi. This is wrong. Yoga already defined. And yoga is the expertness of karma. Expertness means karma, if not done properly, is binding us. Karma, if done properly, helps us to be released. This is kaushalam. Sa chaturi, that is cleverness. Where what we do should help us to break bondages, to help us discover our knowledge and power. And when we do karma with this attitude, that is the kaushal, that is the expertise in karma, not the outside expertise. So, this is karma. The Gita says that it is doing work with cleverness and as a science. So this requires a science. Everything requires a science. So karma done haphazardly, or karma done selfishly, or karma done with some other motives will bring, it may bring whatever result outside, but it will bring a wrong sanskaras in us and the character will never be formed. So how karma is to be done? Again same thing. Karma yoga is not karma. Karma is being done. Inside what should be the attitude? If we pay attention to that and if we make it better and better, then the sanskaras will be better and better. So all karma yoga depends upon introspection, correction of the attitude. By knowing how to work, one can obtain the greatest results. What is the greatest result? Mukti. What is the greatest result? Absolute knowledge. And this one gains by doing proper karma. You must remember that all work is simply to bring out the power of the mind which is already there. So from outside we are not going to gain anything. If we do karma in such a way that the power and the knowledge within us comes out, that we have to observe. To wake up the soul. That arousal of knowledge is called waking up the soul. The soul is sleeping by this bhoga attitude. If the soul is awake, we realize our own real nature. So how the karma should be done, that is karma yoga. The power is inside every man, so is knowledge. Both are together. The different works are like blows to bring them out, to cause the giants to wake up. So, the whole thing boils down to motive. Motive. Just now I described about that donation. Motives were different. Before reading, I will quote an example. In Chandigarh, I united was a higher secondary school for girls, the NSS group. Now the girls gathered and said, Swami, we want to ask a question. Our parents see the TV and they do not allow us to see the TV. They tell us, now, daughter, now study. Later on you can enjoy. The Hindi word was Aish. अभी पढ़ो, बाद में ऐश कर लेना. Then the girl is asking a question which they do not ask the parent, they are asking me. हम अभी ऐश क्यों ना कर लें, कल मर गए तो? Why we should not enjoy now if we die tomorrow? Now, I told them how unfortunate that your parents are tagging your study with enjoyment. Why we study? To get knowledge. Why we study? To improve our thinking and brain. Why we study? Really, the study should end in Vairagyam. We have two big examples over this. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you know his name, his elder brother Vishwambar. The moment he completed his study, he left the home and became sannyasi. Because of which Chaitanya was maybe in our language third or fourth standard or second standard even, small boy. His father stopped his going to the school. That if the result of study is Vairagyam, I do not want my boy to study. Now what did Chaitanya Bapu did? Some dirty thing, dung or cow dung, he used to bring on his head and stand before his mother. Mother will say, dirty boy, good boys do not do like this. He said, how do I know what is good and what is dirty? You are not sending me to school. He would tear his clothes and come before his mother. My boy, good boys do. How do I know what is good and bad? You are not sending me to school. So two things we learn from here. The ultimate result is what Chaitanya's brother showed. And the beginning result Chaitanya is showing. To understand good and bad. This is the motive for study. And while studying, we are thinking of that job and job-oriented study. What we can learn then? Clear earning will not come. Anyway, so Swamiji is describing motives one after the other, better and better, less and less selfish, more and more unselfish. That is the next topic. We shall take this tomorrow. Huh? Today, in addition to this, I am telling some incidents. Two incidents. One boy, engineering student in Chandigarh, came to me and said, I try to study, I want to study, but I am not able to study. I said, what happens? He says, the book is open. I start thinking, I will pass examination, I will get a job, I will marry, and my study is not done. And I said, Gita has told us, don't think of the fruit from outside, then only you can work better. Is it not a case like that? Another boy said, some big man, Gita is useless for modern man. I said, what is it? He said, we know that without motive we cannot work. And Gita is asking to work without motive? I said, my friend, that is not true. Gita is not asking you to do work without motive. We also know, and Bhagavan knows it much more, that man cannot do work without motive. Gita is asking us to make our motive higher and higher, not without motive. If we think of the outside result, our motive is not correct. If we think of the improvement which it brings in us, then our motive is correct. Dealing with students for my life, I coined a formula. If we run after enjoyment, you cannot improve. And that enjoyment also will slip away from you. And if you continuously try for improvement and improvement and improvement, the joy will follow you like a shadow. I did not use the word enjoyment, the joy. If we struggle for enjoyment, you cannot improve, and that enjoyment also will slip away from you. If you struggle for improvement, then joy will follow you. So, these simple observations I have done. Swamiji's description of the motives will be taken up in the next class, next Monday. So please, our time is getting up, and this is a big point, very big point Swamiji is making about these motives and beautifully explained. So we'll take it up in our next class. Om Paratatve Sadalino Ramakrishna Samagya Yo Dharma Sthapanarato Viresham Tam Namamyaham. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.